Now, there's been a lot of conjecture around Liverpool. There's been a lot of talk around Liverpool. There's been a lot of who knows what's happening with Liverpool. Now, they their woes continue. Their first half woes continue, and their just overall poor performance. That just continues. Now they fell 3-2 to Arsenal. They fell 3-2 to Arsenal over the weekend. They copped a goal in the first minute, and this has come off the back of conceding a goal. In the last three games they conceded a goal. Their first goal they conceded has been within the first 5 minutes. Conceded in the first minute against Arsenal, conceded in the fourth minute against Brighton, conceded in the fifth minute against Napoli. So there was a 2-1 win over Ajax and a 2-0 win over Rangers where no goals were conceded within the first 5 minutes. But the point stands. They are starting games off sluggish. They are starting games off in a very un-Liverpool fashion, and in a way which is concerning for Liverpool supporters because it doesn't seem to be going away. Now, when we speak about Liverpool, I think it's important to understand context in a sense and not just say, "Oh, they're rubbish." Not get rid of them, but they're rubbish. Write them off. They won't finish top four, etc. Because this whole Klopp 7-year thing is something that I want to speak about, and it's something I might speak about a bit later on. But when we speak about what's happening with them on the pitch, I think the sale. And I've spoken about this. I spoke about this in a couple of episodes ago. It might have been maybe 5 or 6 episodes ago at the start of the season. I think there's a clip. There is a clip on the YouTube channel actually. So if you want to watch my first opinions on this, and then my developed opinions after a couple of weeks later. But go back and watch that. But I think the sale of Sadio Mane has been underestimated quite a bit, and has been underestimated by me especially. I said pre-season that I think Mane for Nunez will be seamless. I didn't use those exact words, but I thought that it would be pretty seamless in terms of Mane comes out, Nunez comes in, Diaz gets a little bit more of a pronounced role, Jota needs to step up, and then you have Carvalho and Elliott who kind of add that little bit of spark, especially from midfield. I thought that those players will start to outweigh the loss of Mane. I'm wrong. I think it's pretty clear to say that I'm wrong. He was a key cog in their attacking machine last year. He was a key pillar in their output last year as well. Even if it wasn't direct output, just in terms of being involved in plays, positioning himself very well, and the versatility that he offers as well. I think he's obviously we know how good he is off the left hand side. That's probably where he plays his best. But he can go up front. We saw that last year. I think he's a better striker than Salah in terms of a number 9 or like a false 9. I think he does that role better. So his loss has been massive. And we see now they just seem so disconnected. They seem so disconnected. They seem very not like the opposite of fluid. They seem very blocky in a sense. It seems like this is midfield third, attacking third, defensive third. There's no connection. There's no fluidity between these players and between the systems. Like each individual third, there's no connection between them. It seems like they're all doing the same. They're all doing different things and are all trying to get different outcomes in a sense, if that makes any sense. There's just no connection between the players. There's no connection between the manager and the players. And Liverpool are at a crossroads. They're at a crossroads because this could either go one or two ways. Either Klopp completely changes things and he turns things around and starts to get them back to where they were last year and back when they won the league. He starts to get them back to that kind of form. Or he keeps doing what he's doing, he kind of shits himself in a sense, and they just capitulate. It's a real possibility that they don't make top 4. I don't think they're going to win the league. I think that's kind of all but guaranteed now. And they just look very un-Liverpool-like. They look like Liverpool from 10 years ago under Brendan Rodgers. They look like a Liverpool side that aren't struggling with injuries to the extent that they were maybe 2 years ago when they really struggled with injuries. And they just seem so disconnected. None of the players are performing well. Salah's having a stinker of a season. We'll touch on Trent in a little bit. Nunez hasn't hit the ground running. I think Diaz has probably been their best player this year. and even he was very poor on the weekend. Yeah, there's just something missing. There is something tangibly missing from that Liverpool side. I don't know what it is, but there is something not right, and they need to fix it quickly. Otherwise, Klopp's going to get the sack, or they're going to not finish top four, and that's going to be disastrous for them because you have players like Salah, like Fabinho, like Trent, like Van Dijk, like Alisson, who demand Champions League football, who demand this high level football, and if they don't get it, I can see a lot of upheaval being not implemented, but I can see a lot of upheaval being like, how do you say this? I can see a lot of upheaval. I can see a lot of upheaval happening in that squad if they don't make Champions League, and if they don't make Champions League, I think Klopp's job is untenable because I think this squad is Champions League level straight away. And the thing is, right, I think with a successful coach, you allow them, in my opinion, one free hit. In a sense, you allow them one kind of not free hit, but like you allow them one blip. I think you allow them one blip, and Klopp had that blip a couple of seasons ago. Granted, he was injury ridden. Granted, it was COVID, and he was completely mucked up and whatever. But that was his blip. I don't think he can afford to have another drop in form without getting sacked. I just don't think that's tenable. I don't think that you can have that, in my opinion. I just don't see it working. I just don't see it. Just don't see it turning around after that happens. So yeah, that's like from the Klopp and like like a holistic perspective. And then when you take a look at the individuals, I mean, let's touch on Trent. Let's speak on Trent now. I like Trent. I really do like Trent. He kind of has probably been the best right back over the last couple of years. We all know his offensive output is ridiculous. Like, it is absurd how good offensively he is. He is one of the best crossers of the ball I've ever seen. Once again, I am only 18, so if you give me names like David Beckham, I didn't see him in his prime. So with Trent, offensively he's great, and we all know that. But I think his defensive limits have always been there. He's never been a good defender, not a defender in terms of position, in terms of actually defending. He's never been very good. I think that's kind of like a pretty unanimous consensus. He's never been very good. He's always been covered by Henderson. That's kind of why Henderson's still in the team. And also because he's the captain. But Henderson cutting across and being behind Trent to allow him to push forward has always helped. And I think also the fact that Joel Matip has come on leaps and bounds ever since Liverpool bought him, playing in that right centre-back role, has done him a world of good. I think you can also put Kanate and Joe Gomez in that position as well. I think they've all performed very well to help Trent. And I think that's kind of what their modus operandi is when you play as that right centre-back is, yeah, you defend, great, but just make sure Trent doesn't get exposed because we need his offensive output, so we need to cover him defensively, and that's something that happens in world football. Like across every single team, players make sacrifices for other players because of how good they are. I can't remember, it might be Maurizio Sarri, even Antonio Conte spoke about it with Eden Hazard. He was like, without the ball, when you have Hazard in your team, without the ball you're playing with 10 men, but with the ball it's like you're playing with 12. Because he's just so good with the ball that you need to make sacrifices when you don't have the ball just to get the best out of him. That's what it is with Trent. They need to make sacrifices in terms of defensive shape and midfield shape to get the best out of him. Now, I think the fact that the system and the structure that Liverpool are playing with is slowly slipping away and slowly becoming less prominent. I think that is a reason why Trent is becoming more exposed and is becoming more of a defensive liability. I don't think Trent's defensive form has slipped at all. I think he's been the same defensively as he's always been. It's just that the system around Trent is now failing, which is leaving him exposed, which is leaving him in positions where he's one-on-one with an attacker, where he has to make these recovery runs, which he isn't good at. I think he has been left out to dry a little bit by the system. But in saying that, he needs to be better. Like, I think that the second goal was... I mean, even the first goal, you can kind of blame him for it, but should he have tracked the run a little bit better? Probably, but I think that's a little bit harsh blaming the first goal on him. I think the second goal, what is he doing? Like, I just don't understand what the thought process is. That, to me, screams of a player who is so out of his depth. He came across... Like, I think it was Martinelli, or I can't remember who it was, who had the ball on the left-hand side. Henderson was tracking him. Henderson had that run covered. He was going to push him to the byline and cause a corner at worst, right? Yeah, that was fine. Trent goes to move across to double up, but in doing so, all the player needs to do is just pass it back to Martinelli, who has a 3-on-1 at the back post. I just don't get what that was about, in a sense. And he just was poor again. Defensively poor. In one-on-one situations, poor. And I know that's because, like I said, he has been left exposed a little bit. But when you're left exposed, it how do you explain this? When a player's left exposed, their natural ability comes to the fore and comes to the, like, how do you explain this? When you're left exposed as a player, if you're left exposed on the football pitch, how you recover from that is through your natural ability and is through your actual ability to defend the player properly. We've seen that Trent is now exposed, so his natural ability to defend the footballer or to defend an attacker isn't good. And we all know that, but it's been shadowed by how good Liverpool have been defensively and how good their structure has been for so long. Now it's starting to slip away. We've now come to say, all right, now we actually realise how poor he is defensively. I think you can say that with a lot of players. I think that take a look at maybe, I don't know, that Leicester team that won the league, right? You take Kante, Mahrez and Vardy, they're probably the only three players that are good from that team. You take everyone else and they just fit the system to absolute perfection. To perfection. Which meant their individual quality got shadowed because where they were and what they were told to do was just so correct. That's what Trent has had for the past couple of years. He's had players around him that know exactly what to do to cover him, know exactly what to do to make sure he looks good, to allow him to pick up the ball out wide, cross the ball, he can get 25 assists a season, have 30 score involvements or goal involvements. So, with Trent, it's so tricky. Because he's not the only one. I think Salah's had a poor season. I think Van Dijk's had a poor season. I think Fabinho's had a poor season, and he's obviously been dropped. Not dropped, but he's been out of favour. They went with Henderson and Thiago as the double pivot. I don't think Henderson should be playing anymore, by the way. I think he's gone past it now. I think he's past it. I think Liverpool need to persist with Thiago and Fabinho as a double pivot if they're going to play that double pivot. Yeah. I mean, they can't play Arthur. I told you that was going to be a disaster. And it is 3 to 4 months out. Bang. So it's tricky. It's going to be very tricky. It's going to be very tricky as to what they do. Because, like I said, systematically they've been poor all year. And it doesn't help that their players have been poor as well. So it's like you can normally get away with it. How do I explain this? You can normally get away with it when your players are playing well. So if your system's failing, you can get away with it if your players are playing well. I think we saw that in the back end of last year for Liverpool a little bit. I thought their system started to let them down a little bit, and then these players just played out of their skin, right? And we've seen that with a couple of other teams as well. But because Liverpool players have been appalling, they're being exposed on like double the amount that they normally would be, which is disappointing. But it's tricky. It's tricky because, like I said, they're at the crossroads. They're at the crossroads of they either make the change and risk either climbing back up the league, or they need to make the risk, and then they need to make the change, which is the risk, if that makes sense. And if they make that risk, which is the change of system, change of personnel, change of whatever, they risk dropping further down the league or climbing back up to where they were, or they can stay the exact same as what they're doing, and just maintain this level. Because I don't see it changing unless something changes, if that makes sense. Like, they can't continue going at this rate in terms of the system, in terms of the players, in terms of everything. This can't continue without their form either plateauing or even dipping. They won't improve if they keep playing like they are. Their results won't improve. So it's like, I don't know. I just don't. Yeah, fuck. It's tricky, very tricky. But I think you have to have the faith in Klopp to get it done. If he doesn't get it done, then we need to have a conversation, because that's not good. But yeah, let's move on. Let's do we need to move on now? Have I touched on everything I want to touch on? I think they can get away with it if they get a trophy. Obviously, it won't be the Premier League. I think they are one of the better cup sides in the world. So whether that's Champions League or FA Cup or even League Cup, I could see them. I can see them getting a trophy, at least one, maybe even two. They are obviously within a shout for the Champions League. They always are. Like, Liverpool in Europe are a different beast, so they could be 11th in the table. But they're always a threat in Europe, so you can't really take a whole lot from that. But yeah, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be very tricky to see what happens. If Liverpool finish this season 4th without a trophy, I think it's a failure, and I think Klopp's position needs to be looked at. I'm not saying he should be sacked. I think it needs to be looked at. If they finish 5th without a trophy, I think he needs to be gone. If he finishes 5th and an FA Cup, I think you give him the benefit of the doubt. If he finishes 5th with a League Cup, I think you give him the benefit of the doubt. Just if he wins the Champions League, then he could finish 10th for all anyone cares, to be honest. Yeah, and he's not going to win the league, so it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky to see how this develops and how this finishes up. But you got to give him the benefit of the doubt, in my opinion. Let's move on. Let's move on to the other team that played that.